Back to the war. India and China eventually made a front line. India is eventually able to break this front line with a massive encirclement, and they continue. And yes, I do sound even more sick than 10 minutes ago. Then instead they're pushing to Mongolia, and they destroy one of Mongolia's precious treasures in an airstrike, that being the statue of Genghis Khan, or Genghis Khan, actually. With this, Mongolia decides to, after lots of other treasures being destroyed, Mongolia sends in a massive pushdown with lots of mainly armored vehicles. And for some reason they decided to not sell their navy to China, but to keep it for some reason because they think that's going to help. This caused an encirclement in some Chinese captured territory. Um, there's an Indian there's a POW room made in China for Indian POWs, and now India is very determined to break through and free it. They eventually are able to encircle the camp, and they also start circling lots of the outskirts until they eventually fortify it. They get closer and closer to the camp, and they finally meet to it. They cause more encirclements to try to get as much as they can out of it. There's another encirclement, and then spearheads sent down to take out the remaining armies. China, instead of just fleeing and saving their troops, they decide to just exterminate all the POWs in here. When India finally liberates it, they only save around 6 of their POWs, with the rest being dead. India is shocked at the atrocities, and they call back Japan, and they uncondemn Japan's actions in Nanking. So Japan pushes back down to Nanking, commits even more atrocities, and causes an encirclement. Due to them being reaccepted by India. Then start to push through, and China's getting pretty nervous, so they decide to drop some nukes. They drop one over Seoul, and then they decide to drop one over Tokyo and Hiroshima. Hiroshima. I like saying that way. This causes India to also send in some nukes. One of them being over Beijing and Shanghai, as well as Manchuria and some occupied Tibet and Chinese Tibet lands. Um, with this, the Middle East also decides to send in some more troops to help out India. But a front line is mainly established right here, and I did not mean to nuke that whole thing. That's a front line now. Screw it. And they're mainly being held out right through here, as multiple attempts to break the Chinese siege are going with mild success. With this, India decides to just instead encircle the front line, and they're able to finally break through it. China is once again getting nervous through here, so they decide to drop even more nukes, but they're all shot down mainly by Israel defenses. Mongolia is also starting to get pushed back more and more into its own territory, and there's starting to be riots and strikes in the country, as well as China. India sends in a couple of spearheads over to try to take out China more easily, and they just keep going and going and going. They eventually resecure the radioactive lands, and they decide to drop another nuke over Mongolia. China tries to recapture the radiated cities, but to no avail. So now, the Allies decide to hatch a plan with Indian and Japanese troops going to meet up with each other so they can firmly secure China, the Chinese front line. The spearheads eventually all happen around the same time, and it's going pretty well for them. Um, India makes a separate spearhead through here, and the Japanese make more encirclements while also making some sort of claw spearhead. China then decides that this is their only hope to win the war, so they decide to just to hold a massive front line right over here around the spearheads. Um, with this, they also decide to drop another nuke over unified Korea, and they also drop a nuke over Nagasaki, as well as this Japanese island. They get one over Ho Chi Minh City and also one over what was formerly Myanmar's capital. This infuriates India, so they decide to connect all their spearheads over here, so they can push down and encircle more Chinese troops. The Japanese, with even more war crimes this time, are eventually able to take Shanghai. Until the front line is eventually broken. They then start pushing up and up and up, and don't take Beijing, Jesus. So yeah, the front line is eventually captured. and they decide to go down instead of taking the capital. They decide to go down and help out the Hong Kong and Taiwan forces. Um, Vietnam starts to push out of the Chinese land, and now this is a very popular area of China, so it's not too easy to take over. They eventually do liberate Taiwan and Hong Kong's forces, so they can kind of just help instead of fighting on their own. And then the Battle of Beijing Start is going to be the bloodiest war of all time in history. Barely, just barely beating Stalingrad at around 2.8 million deaths. And there's a train outside, so I guess I'm doing